So attack and defense CTFs can vary how they work, and this year's CTF also had different rules and ideas were tweaked to balance the game. It's important that we look at the rules and the setup for this CTF closely so that you can understand the nuances and strategies. So don't take this as a general description how every A&D CTF works, but they do share some similarities, and we are able to make some assumptions about that for preparations. So typically, an attack and defense CTF works like this. Every team gets a machine. This machine runs services, so it runs programs that can be exploited. Exploiting means, like with every CTF challenge, your goal is to steal the flag on said system. So that might be a flag.txt file or whatever with a unique flag to prove you got access to the system. So your team has to analyze, reverse engineer, and eventually create the exploit to get the flag from a target system. That's like every other Jeopardy CTF game. But the twist is that every team has such a vulnerable machine running. So you have to use your exploit against all the other machines. By doing so, you are stealing the flag from each team, and that gives points. Now, there are a few additional things that make attack and defense very different from regular Jeopardy. First, the defense part. Teams can defend themselves from exploits. How this is done can vary from CTF to CTF, but often you are required to patch the vulnerability, or maybe you can even deploy firewall rules. This means while you are analyzing and hunting for the vulnerability to create your own exploit, at the same time you think about and eventually implement a patch for your own machine. But of course you want to prevent so-called Superman defenses. You could just kill your own service or completely block any input, or just remove entire functionalities of the program in order to prevent other teams from stealing your flag. So you can see that defense can be very creative and quickly can become unfair. Thus often a so-called SLA, service level agreement, is implemented. So that means a game server will constantly execute test cases against your service to ensure that your service is still running as intended. But even then, a clever defender could try to create a patch that allows the game server tests, but blocks all the other players. You can imagine that defense ideas and strategies can go wild, and to keep the game fair, you would try to prevent that. How exactly Defcon CTF did that, we will learn shortly. Another important detail is the concept of the game tick, a clock. So if you would just have to steal the flag once from all teams, there would be a race to the first exploit and then all the teams get exploited. That's it. That doesn't sound too exciting. So typically the game is ran in ticks or intervals. For example, every 5 minutes the flags on all teams' machines are exchanged. So you run your exploits every 5 minutes against all teams and hope to still find a vulnerable service. Then you take the flags, submit them to the scoreboard, and it then awards you with points for how many flags you got this round. This actually makes attack and defense exciting. So you are sitting there and you see that a team has a working exploit against you. They get points each round for it. So now you are trying to fix the bug in order to stop them from gaining those points. And then crazy strategies might emerge. Could you exploit your own service and submit the flag yourself for one additional point? Is your team the only one with a working patch? Do you want to share the patch with other teams so that the current top team can't gather even more points? It can go crazy. Then sometimes you have access to the whole network traffic. Sometimes you can log traffic yourself, or the game itself logs it and shares the PCAPs. But that means now traffic analysis becomes super important. You could maybe steal exploits from other teams by simply replaying the packets. You could try to extract flags that teams have leaked through the network traffic and submit it yourself. And to protect your own exploits, you now start to think about obscuring your exploits in the traffic. Maybe you know bugs in Wireshark that you can include in your traffic to make analysis for other teams harder. Okay, so now you have a good general idea, and based on this, teams prepared for the Defcon finals. Basically, every team has a software developed to automatically execute exploits against each team every tick, so you don't want to do that by hand, as well as then taking the flags that are returned and automatically submit them to the scoreboard. You also don't want to gather and submit maybe dozens of flags every 5 minutes by hand. Here's for example the flag submitter service from the team Macaroni, the Italian team. And you can tell that some teams might totally over-engineer them with fancy stats and so forth. And maybe even develop a lot more tools, for example to analyze PCAPs. Maybe you don't want to use Wireshark for various reasons.